engaged in even energy exchange in our businesses. So for me, coaching those 3 people for free was like the best energy exchange ever, because they were singing my praises and they were giving me great feedback and they were recommending people to me and so on and so forth. So like there was an even exchange there. It just might look a little bit different at first, but if that starts your sales momentum, which it totally did for me,
yeah,
it's so worth it, right? So like, doesn't mean get sold on yourself and just like journal all day and like find your self-worth. It means like get the training you need, go out and coach for free, do the mindset work, but there's like practical pieces that match it too, right?
Totally. I'm just checking here. We're getting a bunch of comments. Debbie says hi. Claire says, thank the Lord, this has been my bugbear. I don't know exactly what she's talking about. She said it 7 minutes ago. So, she said she totally agrees with you. Whatever you said, she totally agrees with you.
Thanks,
she said that's one of the reasons I wanted to work with you, Lacey. Love that. So true. So we're getting a lot of affirmations from our crew here. So guys, again, those of you who are just joining, the whole topic of this is how to get sold on yourself and really how to position yourself so that whether you're a new coach or you're a seasoned coach, you can actually bring in the clients that you want to bring in. And it's interesting, Lacey, because I feel like we go through phases of this ourselves too, even as we're in the business for longer, where like, you know, I know for me, like I was really sold on myself when I first started out, and then I changed and my business changed and my life changed. And I became a little bit like not sold on myself. And I was like, what's going on here? And I've kind of, you know, over, I would say like the last 6 to 9 months been having my own revival and kind of declared that was what was going to happen. And now I feel like I'm more sold on myself than I ever have been. And so do you get that?
So
is that why you're laughing?
No, I'm laughing because Megan and I were talking about this the other day, just like you and Liv are just like on it right now. Like you guys are in it and on it and like you can feel that energy. And so I think that's so true. I can totally see that coming through.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that acknowledgement from you, especially. So, you know, the other thing we really wanted to talk about today was how to show up and share your magic in a way that feels good to you. And that makes selling easy, right? And I do think I'd love for you to speak to this for a moment because, you know, I know that one of the biggest things we teach and we have to teach in order to have the success rate that we have in terms of people actually getting an ROI and starting to make their money back while they're in the program, we have to teach sales. And I know that that's still a word that many, many women cringe at. And so I'm kind of curious because you're someone who like I see as very feminine and very kind of integrated. And so I'm wondering like, how do you ever have people have reactions to that? How do you address that?
I'm like so obsessed with this topic because I feel like in the like service-based industry, we're like on 2 sides of the coin, right? Like one side is like, we basically act like we're selling fax machines and we're supposed to be like super hard and pushy and act like it's not personal and like all this stuff. Or the other side is we go so crazy, like service-based that we're like giving it all away for free and we're like not even selling and we're like, you know, crossing all our boundaries. And I just like really believe that there is this amazing middle ground that we can find ourselves in where we don't have to be like, you don't want it bad enough if you're not buying, or versus like, sure, take all my shit for free. So
totally.
I think that one of the most magical things you can do in a sales call process, whatever, and is so aligned with being feminine and being a service provider is just to empower the person on the other end. That's number one. And number 2 is to make them feel seen, heard, and understood. Like so often we make sales calls about us. Like we're like, how do I show them I'm amazing? It's like we show up to the call like the dancing monkey, like ready to show them how awesome we are. And like they don't care, because here's the thing. If you're actually creating a sales process, if you're putting out content, if you're building a relationship, if you're talking to people, by the time they're getting on the sales call, they're already sold on you. It's time for you to understand and see them enough that they want to buy from you.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So like If someone's getting on a call with you or Liv this week, like they're already sold on IGC, they're already interested in coach training, they're already ready. Like you guys are just going to be like, let's see if we see you, hear you, and can solve your problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. I'm like, I want to tag our trainers here even because I think this is so important for us to remind ourselves and our trainers and our team and our clients all the time is that if someone's said yes to having a conversation with you, like they've already said yes. I remember one of the most important things I learned in my coach training when I did it in 2013, and there was some wonky stuff in that process, which is why I ended up starting my own company. But there was also some good stuff, obviously, because the program I went through was much more expensive than our program. It was a $15,000 program. And I think, know, and believe that our program is so much better for various reasons. The only thing I wish sometimes is that we could have more in person, but the benefit of that is that you can do it from wherever. And you actually get to have relationships with women across the world, which is so fucking cool. Like I was just in LA and Olivia was there and Crystal Cave was there, who's one of our graduates, and Natalie, who's one of our graduates and now mentors. And, you know, we ended up just meeting up with all these other women. And I don't know, I think it's really cool to be able to travel anywhere and, you know, link up with people that you've met through the internet.
Yeah.
Actually, it was so weird. We met up with Heather Bruce Allison. She ended up doing a photo shoot for me and Natalie, one of our other mentors. And Heather's a leader and a mentor in our program.
Your photos are amazing.
Thank you. And it was just like Heather and I, she went through our coach training 3 years ago. 3 years ago. We've never met in person.
Yeah.
But it was so weird because it was like, hi. Like, and it was like, I was like, I'm so excited to meet you in person. 3 years later.
Funny. Yeah. But you don't even feel like like you would love that, but it doesn't even feel like that's missing, I think, when you form those kind of relationships, right?
Totally.
But it's also such a good point of the sales process because it's like we can form these relationships with people online now. Like I feel like I have such close relationships with probably like a bunch of you that are on here, a bunch of people in my community that like I've never even met in person. But like if any of you were to get on a sales call with me, I could be pretty confident that you were like already sold because we built that relationship, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's a really good point. And I remember what they said in training. They were like, sometimes it's actually going to be a lot easier than you thought it was going to be. So somebody might say, okay, well, how do I get started? And they said, don't make the mistake of being like, well, hold on. Let me make sure I tell you everything you're actually signing up for. Like, don't second guess the other person's yes. And I think that we do that. And I think that we do that as women. And I think that we do that as salespeople. And I think we do it in business. And I think we do it in personal. But it's like, that's part of like the leaning back energy and like the being based sales that we talk about and that we teach, where it's like, look, if someone's buying you and your being and your energy and your presence and the chemistry of that collaboration,
right?
Like, just let it be. You know trust
so
that.
Funny.
What?
Probably the easiest sales call I ever had was with Liv.
No. Really?
Which is funny, right? But I remember her saying to me, she was basically like, so like, what, like, I think she asked me like what my values were or something like that. Cause that's such a Liv question. Right. And then she was like, so I'm pretty much like ready to go. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, was this the easiest sales call you ever had? And I was like, actually, yes. But it was like that's a perfect illustration of like, you can let it be really easy, or I could have gotten on there and been like, oh, but let me like fake it and like act really perfect and tell you all the reasons why you should hire me and like be a dancing monkey. Instead, I was just like, hi. And it was a conversation. And she was like, ask me one question and we ended up working together. Right.
And it's also so funny because, and Olivia will totally agree with me on this. Like, Olivia is not somebody who will even get on the phone with someone who she's not like really and she also is not somebody like I'm of the idea of like, let me see how it feels. I'm going to interview 3 people. You know what I mean? But she's like very like, let me just get this over with, you know?
She is.
And everybody's different. Like every buyer is different. And it's just really, really an interesting process. And so what would you say, like, if you were to say like the 1, 2, fine, maybe 3 things in terms of how to show up and just share your magic, what would you say that those things are?
On a call or pre-call or both?
I guess both.
Okay.
Just this process of showing up.
So I would say that, like, again, sometimes we make it so complicated. And listen, like, if I was a new coach and someone said this, I'd probably like eye roll a little bit, but it's so true. Like, you have to show up and just be yourself. Like, I actually did a practice sales call with one of my clients a couple days ago. She's this amazing, dynamic, smart human. And when we started practicing the sales call, she literally basically just like shrunk and was like trying to say things right and do it right. And like all of this stuff that like took her out of the picture. And I was like, I literally just felt your energy like vacate the room. Like, I don't know where you are, but you're not here. Right. Like your mask of trying to do the perfect sales call is here.
Got it. Yeah.
Whether that's on a sales call or in your content or in your live streams or whatever, like, people can feel when you vacate the room, or they can feel when you're not like fully being there. And I think that's such a piece of owning your magic, is like, you have to be in it and like, it has to be you and your personality. So how I'm going to do a sales call, even though we have very similar value systems, is going to be totally different than how Katie does a sales call, because we have really different personalities, right? So you have to bring your personality to the table, whether that's in content and sharing and showing up, or in a sales call. Because the other thing I see happen a lot is like, people will follow like a sales script or somebody else's like content plan or like content formula, or, like swipe copy posts or whatever. And they're just not congruent. So that's the second piece of sharing your magic, is like, I want to show up on a sales call the exact same way as I would in a coaching call. It doesn't mean I coach on the sales call, but like, my energy, my personality, my dynamic, my way of saying things should be the same. If I'm like using a script on a sales call, and then like, showing up totally different on a coaching call, like, that's a problem. Like, that's why value-centered sales talks about starting, getting, and keeping the sale, because you want to keep it on the back end. You don't want to follow somebody else's script on the front end and then have them show up on the coaching call to like a totally different person. Yeah. Or, I think sometimes what we do on a sales call is we let them believe we have all the answers. Yeah. Right? Like, we're like, oh yeah, I'll totally help you with that. Yeah, I'll totally get you to the place where you can make 6 figures or whatever, because we're told that that's what we should do. Yeah. We like have all the answers on a sales call. Then we get into a coaching call and we're like, I hold you as powerful and believe you have all the answers. And they're like, what the fuck? 2 days ago, you knew everything, right? Right. So,
So what I'm hearing is like, number one, make sure you're consistently bringing your personality to the table.
Be congruent.
And then be congruent, which like, to me would be like, be in integrity, like be the same everywhere, which, is a really big thing for me. I'm super casual as a person. I think I'm very professional, and I actually try to be super, super professional so that it's okay for me to be so casual. But I want people to feel like so comfortable, because for me, that's where growth has happened. And the people I've been able to be the most honest and be the most real with are the relationships where I've experienced the most growth, whether it's professional or personal. So that's, I think, my gift and what I like to facilitate. And I think that you do the same thing, where you're just, it's me and it's you, and let's just do the damn thing. But let's remove the barriers or the walls that make it feel like I have to show up a certain way as coach and you have to show up a certain way as client.
Yeah, I think like it's also like, know your magic, right? Because like you just like so beautifully articulated like how you see yourself, how you show up, and like what your kind of like take and like magic is, like the being able to be both professional and casual at the same time and create a really safe space or whatever, right? So like you have to know what that magic is for you. So I always say like you need to bring value to a discovery call. So like the value doesn't have to be you coaching them or giving them answers, but the value should be like, at least they should walk away from that call feeling really empowered, or feeling like they really see what their pattern is, or feeling like they really know what their next steps are, whatever that is. But like, you should be bringing value there too, but you like have to know what your magic is, right?
Yes. And I think again, like just the dating analogies, which has always been a thing for me. I usually tell that to people on sales calls too. I'm like, I do lots of dating analogies. Really?
I do.
But it is because coaching is
so
fundamentally a relationship. And so if there's a breakdown in the relationship, let's say like your client isn't paying, or they said they were a yes, and then you send them the contract and they're dodging you. Like, look, as a coach, you have to take responsibility for that. There's some kind of breakdown in relationship. And so when there's a breakdown in relationship, the only thing to do is to get back into relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's super, super simple, but people are like, oh my God, this person's this, and this client's screwing me over. What? No, dude. It's such an easy thing, right? Like we just have to get back into relationship, and how kind of depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Anyways, the analogy. So the analogy is,
yes,
what's special about working with you? No different than like you have to know going into a date or even being in a relationship. Like I find so many women struggle because they're like, you know, they're trying to understand their man, which is just like an endless battle. You're never going to understand your man all the way, right? If you're dating, I've never dated women. If you're dating women, I'm thinking maybe it's different. I've heard from some of my friends that it is a little bit easier to understand, but you're never going to totally understand any other person, you know? But if you're trying to understand somebody else, to understand what they're doing, and no, we can't do that, right? So we have to just know. We have to just know who we are, and we just have to know what we bring to the table, and we have to know what's special about us. And even in our friendships, we have to know, like, why am I a fucking awesome friend? Like, what's so cool about being friends with Katie, and what's so cool about being friends with Lacey? And, you know, not from a place of like comparison, but just from really, really knowing ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then what is special about working with me? And how is it like a little bit different than working with someone else, you know, and being able to speak to that and just say, look, here's what's going to be different about working with me versus another coach. I feel completely comfortable saying that to people, but you have to really know yourself, because it's not as black and white as being like when I had a spray tan company, I'd be like, look, if you go get a spray tan at Fit to Be Tan down the street, I've heard that their spray tans are really orange. So just be aware. I'd be like, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to have to fix your spray tan. And they'd be like, all right, hold on. Let me go cancel that appointment and book with you. Right. But, you know, not from a place of competition. I'm kind of being playful here. The key though, is that you have to know yourself, and you have to be willing to say that. And how do you do that? You get pro bono clients. Like you work with people, you know, in the beginning, who are going to very, very, very clearly reflect to you what's so great about this partnership.
I think like another really cool question that like I don't think we ask ourselves enough, and again, not from a place of competition, but because it fucking matters, is like, do you think that you're the best person for them to hire?
Yes, I agree.
Because like if they're like talking to 3 other coaches, or going to the other spray tan place, or dating 2 other girls at the time, whatever, it's like, do you really believe that you're the best person for them to hire? Because if you don't, it's going to be really hard for them to. It doesn't mean that you have to think everybody else sucks, but like you really have to believe like, I am going to be an amazing coach too. Like I always say on a discovery call, like, I'm going to show up for you 100%. Like, are you going to do the same? Like, I want them to know, like, I'm all in, I'm ready, like I'm here, versus like, oh, well, I don't know, like maybe it would be a better idea for her to hire that other coach. Like if you're thinking that, you're bringing that energy to the table, right?
Yes, but also, yes. And also if you in your body feel like this is not going to be a fit,
that too. Yes.
You know, then you either have to say that, or you may have to say something like, look, I trust you to choose, because I see people taking themselves out of the game sometimes, and I also don't believe in that. Sometimes people can be really, really wonky in a sales process, whether it's the coach or the client, and then it can be like such a beautiful partnership. Same thing with dating, right? The early phases can be super, super awkward, and then it can actually be a really beautiful partnership. So I think also just putting like the trust back on the client and saying like, look, I'm here. I'd love to work with you if this is what you choose. And if you choose to work with someone else, I totally get it. Like, I'm here
100%.
when you're ready. And so also
it's just like you have to believe it, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Lacey, another question for you, if I may.
Of course.
So we talked about like, one of the things we talked about prior when we were planning this was like the role of inner work and specifically what fears you have to overcome in order to be of service to others. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that like I always notice this like interesting pattern when I like get a new client in value-centered sales or like have a new one-on-one client. And I'm like, they're like, I'm not making the sales I want. And I'm like, well, what's the objection you're getting? Almost always like somebody will get like the same one. Do you see that too? Right? Like, and everybody's is different. Like, but like whatever, one person gets a money objection over and over again. One person hears I'm not ready over and over again. Whatever it is. And so like that's the inner work piece, because like if that keeps showing up for you, it is a mirror reflection of what's going on for you. So like if we're in our sales process and seeing the same things come to us over and over again, or hitting the same wall, or like whatever Katie mentioned earlier, like clients are always ditching out on your contract or whatever, like you have to do the inner work, because that's just as big, if not the biggest part of this game as it is the outer stuff of like, well, how do I overcome that objection? Well, like we can get you better at overcoming that objection, but like you have to get better at not having it called in all the time too, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's true?
Oh my God, totally. And I'm kind of like live processing. People are always like, Katie, I can see you thinking. And I'm like, I know, it's really painful, right? I'm just thinking like, I'm thinking about that because I hate to see people blame themselves for getting the same objection again and again and again.
Yeah.
You know, and most of the women, like a lot of women that I work with, have that awareness that like, of like mirroring, that if you're attracting something, it's likely for a reason. But, you know, I guess I kind of want to ask you without giving like, too much away, how do you advise that people address that thing or that pattern if they're seeing it again and again and again?
I so love that you said that, because I think that's so true, where it's like, I think it's so easy to play a blame game with all of that stuff, right? And like, I think that it's actually like the biggest gift. Like I always say that to my clients. I'm like, here's the good news. It's like, you don't have a whole lot to fix.
Yeah.
Right? Like the good news is you actually know what your problem is, because like a lot of people try to solve sales stuff by like going and buying the sales script, or like throwing a ton of shit at the wall, or like going and marketing more, or getting on the phone with 100 people, or like crazy stuff that you don't have to do. So it's not like about blaming yourself. It's about getting really excited that you figured out that there's a pattern and you get to solve that pattern, because then everything gets easier. And we all have those patterns showing up a bajillion times in a billion ways. It's like dating, right? Like all that does is hold up a mirror for you constantly to see your shit, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So like that's the value of the sales process for you, is it holds up a mirror. So instead of blaming yourself, just get like excited and curious about it, just like we do in all areas of personal development when we find something that's there for us to look at. But as far as that goes, I mean, I think a lot of it's just noticing it and looking at what our own stories or truth is around it. So like, you know, if you keep getting the price objection, like, are you comfortable with your price, or do you secretly think your price is too high?
It's a really good way to put it.
Like if you keep getting the I'm not ready yet objection, do you feel ready to serve these clients? Like, so it doesn't mean you're wrong or your price is wrong, but like now you have something to look at and fix, right? So I think it's just paying attention to that. Like, notice, do you see the same objection showing up? Notice, do you have a big reaction when they do? Do you, can you spend time asking yourself like what's true around that and what might be triggering you around that?
Yeah. I also, as you're talking, I'm like, another really clear way to put it for me is like, if it's not your shit, then you should be able to really easily talk somebody through it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it's not, if you're like, oh, I don't know, you know, and
if you clam up and freak out, there's something there.
Totally. And you know, look, like, and I don't think you're hating on scripts or any of those things at all. I think that you would probably, I think what you would say is that starting out, those things can be really helpful. But we do provide scripts and how to coach through certain objections, but you know, less from like a scripted place. Like we say it's like, it's our training for you to do your way. But more, and Liv and I were talking about this morning on our Facebook Live, on our Live with Liv and Katie, which if you didn't catch, we talked about you. So you might want to watch it. If your ears were buzzing at 11 a.m. Eastern this morning. But we were talking about experiential learning and how, you know, that's the type of learning that we teach, because that's the type of learning that has worked for us. And I don't know how else you learn how to run a business besides running a business. That's why when people are like, I have an MBA, I'm like, good for you. Like, okay. You know what I mean? Crystal Keith, who's a good friend of mine and one of our graduates, we just did a live the other day. She's like, I had an MBA. And I had spent over $30,000 on personal development and different coaches. And it wasn't until I went through IGC's coach training that I actually learned how to take a fucking leap. Because you guys are about action. And like, she's like, Katie, we had met through another mastermind. And she's like, I saw you like, just like kind of testing things and trying things and then figuring it out. And you know, I launched IGC and I was like, we'll see what happens. I have enough information, which was like screenshots of like people saying like, I really want a women's community. I really want, you know, and I was like, oh, like lots of people want this. Oh, that means there's a gap in the marketplace. Oh, I could fill a gap. Oh, I have $10,000 that I could invest in filling that gap. Let's do it, you know? And so, and at the time that was like a reasonable leap for me to take. So, you know, but I had no idea it was going to grow into what it's grown into, and that we would become accredited, and that Liv would, you know, become such a key part of our organization, and that we would be so like legit. You know, Liv is very much like, I'm curious. I feel like we talked about this before, but Liv is very much like, she's always like, don't label me as the boring one. I don't think it's boring. I think like Liv is like the legit, like, you know, she's
like the boss, like
yeah, the boss. That's why I'm like, when you texted me, I CC'd or I added her to the text, and I was like,
that's
hey,
right.
boss, you know,
she is the boss. Yeah,
she is the boss, and I think I'm more of the artist. And she finally said that to me the other day. We were having like a little bit of a difference of opinion on a couple things, which happens, you know, and we were just working it out, and she's like, Katie, I just think you're more like you're more like, you see this as an art. I'm like, Yes, I feel like yes, I see this as an art. And to me, sales is an art, and business is an art, and every graphic or, you know, everything is an art. I just placed an order for like 2 more styles of hats, and I'm so excited because it's like art to me. It's like fashion, you know, and I'm like, this is the closest thing, and this is the easiest thing. And
everyone's like, how much do the hats cost? And
I literally texted her. And, you know, I could make an argument that I'm her boss, right? We don't operate like that. But, like, if anything, she's my boss. So I text her and I'm like, I have a plan to make back the $900 I just spent on hats. Because a lot of them will be gifts for, like, our Leaders Rising program. And I'm like, here's my plan. We have to sell 40 hats at this price. And she, like, I don't even think she responded. Because she's like, Katie, I have more important things to do. Like, sure, figure out the hats. But you know, I'm very business oriented too, for sure. I'm very big on ROI, which is what we're talking about tomorrow with Adrienne. But
I feel like and I think this is the value of like coach training or value-centered sales or any of those things, is like, because she takes that role, she gives you permission to step more into the artistic role. And because you take that role, you give her permission to step more into the whatever boss role. And I think that's like, what we need is like more permission to step into our zone of genius, to step into our magic, to step into, it's not like you aren't a smart businesswoman or couldn't be. It's just that like you thrive when you're like getting to be in the artistic role, right?
Well, yeah, but part of me being a smart businesswoman is attracting somebody who can be my complement, right?
Yes.
And it's the same thing for her. Like, she'll finish something and I'm like, this is not done. This is not done. This is like, we need so many finishing touches. And she's like, okay, then you do it. You know, and she's like but that we both believe in the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like I also believe that done is better than perfect, but if I can figure out perfect, I'll do it, you know? So I don't know, I guess like to tie all of this together, I think that, you know, your sales process is never going to be perfect. It's just not. But if you're more committed to relationship and being engaged and being present, you said maybe 10 minutes ago, something about, you know, what's special about working with you. Okay. Across the board, if you can do this one thing, you will be more special than 95% of people that this person could hire. Show up and listen. Show up and listen like nobody has ever listened to that person before. And it's funny, one of my clients she was a private client and she kept being like, I don't need training. I don't need training. I don't need training. And I was like, okay. And then it got to a point where like, I couldn't give her enough of the tools, you know, inside of my agreement with the company and how we operate. And I finally said like, look, like I can keep like piecemealing this, but you need to go through our program. Like you need to, it's going to be so much more beneficial because you just get everything. You get to work with me. You get to work in a group. You get to partner coach. You get, you know, so when you talk about like pro bono coaching, which I think can be valuable at any point in your career, you know? I don't really do a lot of like bartering or things like that, but every now and then if I feel like I'm adding in a new skill set or if I want to go deeper with something, or like when I started doing more like grief coaching, I like gifted some sessions to a woman in our training who had just experienced a big loss, and that was like pro bono, right? That was a gift. Even lawyers, like some lawyers will do like 10% of their business every year is pro bono work. And it's like, that gives you an opportunity to hone your craft in a way that you can be a little bit more unattached because there's no exchange of money involved. And you can ask them for reviews and you can ask them, you know.
Well, it's like the experiential part you mentioned, right? Like, I think that that's just such a missing component. Like everybody's taking training after training after training. And obviously we call it coach training, but it like is that experience. Like with value-centered sales, like I used to run it as more of like a big group program. And now I only run it as like a small mastermind because like, I want you to be like actively doing shit and then bringing that to the table and like us dissecting your sales process along the way. So like, if you go do some free calls, bring that to the table and tell us what's working and what's not. Why are they converting afterwards? Why are they not? Like go practice with your mastermind sisters on a sales call. Like, how is that working? How is it not? Because I think that that's so true. It's sort of like what you were saying about like you and Liv building this business and you just figuring out along the way, figuring out your roles or whatever. Like, that's the only way to do this thing. And it's going to continue to evolve. But if you're like trying to follow someone else's exact sales process and script, you're never going to make the tweaks you need. So like you need that mastermind environment or that group environment where people are reflecting that too and where you're actively getting support while you're in process, right?
No, I totally agree with you. I think it's super interesting. So I want to make sure we leave a couple minutes to talk about your bonus and the opportunity people will actually have to work with both of us. But before we go there, there was two other bullet points that I just really loved. And the first is, you know, I'd love to hear from you some real life examples. And I know you have to keep client confidentiality and all that, which I'm cool with. But some real life examples of sales conversations that don't suck. Like what it's like to actually have a sales conversation that feels really fucking good. What can you tell us about that?
I mean, I think it has to feel like a conversation. And I think that's what most people don't do on a sales call is they're trying to like get through a thing. They're like, okay, first I have to do this. And then next I have to do this. And then next I have to tell you about this. And the person feels like not seen, not heard, not understood because they're like almost being pushed through a process instead of, you know, kind of like seen. I think the flip side of that sometimes sucks is that we're doing like way too much coaching. So like one of the rules I always say is like, don't open wounds you can't heal on a sales call. So I think sometimes we'll try to do like 5 minutes of coaching and we'll like rip open this wound and like try to show them that we're kind of a good coach for 5 or 10 minutes. And then we're like, so anyway, you'll also get my course as a bonus. And they're like, what just happened? Right. And now they don't care about your sales call because they're like thinking about this other thing that you just like tore open. Right.
Yeah. That's so That's good, Lacey. That's really good. I like that.
Thanks. So I think like how to do sales calls that don't suck. Have a conversation. Don't feel like you have to like coach or showboat or like really like prove yourself, but like have a legitimate conversation and be present with the person in front of you. I think presence is missing in 90% of sales calls, like you said earlier. And I think that's how to have a sales conversation that doesn't suck, is to make it like an actual conversation. Yeah. And I think to keep empowering them to make the right choice. So like Katie said before, like, it's not like you're saying, I'm the best coach there is. You're like, what's the next best step for you? What's right for you? Like, how are you empowering them to make a good decision? Because they're never going to leave that sales call remembering what your fucking bonus was. They're going to leave that sales call remembering how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. How empowered did they feel when they left it? You know, how seen did they feel? How understood did they feel? Like, that's all they're going to remember.
Yeah. I love that. So it makes me want to check in with our audience. So guys, we can't like see you and feel you the way that we would if we were like in person. But I know that Claire just said, so happy I watched this. Cool.
Oh, thank you, Claire.
Guys, I want you to feel seen and heard, even though we can't do it the way that we'd love to. I am watching your comments here, and I'd love for you guys to share what you're hearing in this conversation so far, what you like, and maybe what you have what you still have a question about. So maybe where there's a gap for you, where something that Lacey or I have said that you're like, ooh, I get that, but I don't totally get it. Would love to hear from you. Debbie said it comes back to loving and being our true selves. And that it took her 42 years to find a man who loves her just as she is. And that had everything to do with her not being sold on herself. So I do think that this is so true across the board. And that's why we say like coach training is ultimately a course in communication and ultimately a program in personal development with an added bonus of like, you know, you will likely start a really, really fucking amazing business or grow a really, really amazing business. You know, I do want to say, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this, but we do tend to attract people who go through our program as their second or even third program. And some of our most successful students are people who, you know, really were like, I don't really know if I need another coach training program. Feels like a little bit of a repeat, but like the program I went through really didn't cover being based sales or didn't even really cover coaching. Like we get a lot of people from like IIN Institute for Integrative Nutrition who are like, I did not learn anything about actual coaching. I just learned how to like write up a nutrition plan, you know, or like personal trainers who are taught how to coach, you know, in that sense. But when it comes to resistance, they're just like, keep at it. I'm like, that's not like, you're not a cheerleader. Like coaching is not cheerleading. Sometimes it's acknowledgement, but it's not like you can't like beat someone's resistance out of them. You can't cheer their resistance out of them. You know, trust me, like I would have figured out a way. So you have to ask really, really, really powerful questions. Mm-hmm. And we have this whole module on like 60 powerful questions that I actually wrote when I was in my training, and we've continued to adapt it. But what I did, Lacey, during my training program was I sat there, and I'm kind of like a selective listener, as I'm sure you could imagine. And I kind of like know when something hits me and know when it doesn't. And I'm more of a doer than like a sit back and learner. Like I like to be involved, right? So either I'm participating a lot and I'm engaged, or I'm like, you know, back on the date I had yesterday, replaying it in my mind. Boy, crazy. So, you know, while I was in coach training, one of the ways that I would keep myself present was I would write down every powerful question, every effective question that I heard one of the trainers ask. And it's now one of our lessons, you know, and that's the kind of stuff that like when I'm working one-on-one with someone who hasn't gone through our coach training program, I'm like, oh, I really want to be able to give this thing to you, and I can give you bits and pieces of it, but I can't give you all of it. And so I'm curious what you feel about like asking questions, particularly in the sales process.
I mean, I think that like, that is how we make someone feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
Right? It's also how we mirror things and help them see their own stuff and help empower them and hold them as powerful. I mean, like, it's just everything, right? And so like, I think that's like what we're saying here about the sales process is like, I would say my sales calls are largely question based.
Yeah.
Because they should be. Not that I'm coaching on the other side of it, but because questions are the key to like making another person feel seen. And like, that's what you're trying to do in sales. If you can create that experience, if you can create safety, it's a really easy yes.
Yeah.
If those things are missing, even if you have the best bonus on planet Earth, it's like never going to sell it, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally. That's like, that's like, it could be the hottest guy ever. And if he's not like there, you know, it's about how people make you feel. And I think that that's really important. So the last thing here, you said, you know, one of the things we wanted to talk about was how to create a systematic sales process. So I guess more of an organized sales system that gives you confidence and makes your prospects want to say yes. So what do you have to say about that?
So I think like, again, it's like 3 parts: starting, getting, and keeping the sale.
Okay.
So like, you have to know where that's breaking down for you, and you have to like be very diligent about fixing that, or you have to build those levels up. So a lot of times like somebody will come to me and be like, I want to learn how to do discovery calls really well. And I'm like, great. So what's happening now? Like, how many are you getting booked? How many prospects do you have? And they're like, well, I have 0 leads right now, and I'm not really sure where my next one is coming from. And I'm like, cool. I definitely don't care how you're doing a discovery call then. Like, right? Like, we have to work on the front end. You have to know how to start a sale. So then if you're doing that, but then you're not converting them, you have to know how to get a sale and vice versa. So like the whole thing there of creating a systematic process is you have to build on those 3 things, and you have to keep finding the breakdown in those and fixing that. Whereas I feel like a lot of people get really comfortable in one area and they just try to hammer that home more and more and more, right? So like, maybe they're not comfortable in sales calls. So they spend all this time marketing, all this time starting the sale, all this work, they're building a community, and then they're never getting sales. And they're like, what's going on? Well, you're never spending any time on that middle ground of getting the sale. Or you're building your community, you're getting sales, and then you're not ever really like doing things that make those clients super happy because you're spending all the time on the front too. So you're never keeping the sale. Like there's a process to it, and it's not as complicated as we think. There's usually like one thing that needs to get your attention or to shift. You do that and you build on that and you keep figuring those out along the way. Suddenly you have like a replicable system, right?
Yeah, totally. Interesting. Okay. I love it. It's so simple, but it's like, it's so simple, but it's in the doing that you learn.
Yes.
And so it's funny, you said something earlier about our training, and you were like, it's a training, but like you're actually teaching people how to do things. And I was like, yeah, it's like, it's a training, but it's really about doing and being in action, you know? And the coach training program I went through, which again was more expensive and a bit odd in various ways. Like there was like an integrity thing that started to feel whatever. Anyways, integrity is very, very important to me, that we like do what we say and say what we do and that kind of stuff. And I know it's important to you too.
Yes.
They taught so much about being and how you're being and who you're being. And a lot of that inspiration actually translated into what we created and call being-based sales. But they didn't teach a lot about doing. And that was one of the gaps in the program. And that was why there was such a high drop-off rate. If I had not grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, like 75 years in business, had sales and marketing experience, and had a sales job, a really intense sales job at a startup in New York City, I would not have been able to grow my business the way that I did. I really was, I don't want to say self-taught because I'd learned a lot earlier in my career, but I was self-integrated. Like I was weaving those things together. And so the thing that stands out about IGC is that like we have this really, and here's the Olivia, we have this really solid training program that's ICF accredited. It's like, it's all the things that it could be in terms of what you're learning, what the modules are. Like there's just no competition in terms of our thoroughness. And the skills and the way that we teach people how to, you know, talk about coaching and how to coach and how to fine tune their technique in a way that's very them, you know, that's very Lacey or very Katie or it's very whoever, is really, really important. And then there's also like the doing, the creating a personal brand. And that's, the part that Olivia is also great at, but is really like the art that I love is like, how do I make this a brand? How do I tell the story? How do I use the pain or the pleasure or whatever I've experienced in my life to become a business and then bring it out into the world? And as I evolve, how do I evolve my message, right? So anyways, a lot of good stuff there. Lacey, so people actually have an opportunity to work with both of us, right? So could you talk a little bit about that? And then I'll talk about the next step for people who are curious.
Yeah, totally. So when we were kind of deciding like how I was going to support IGC in this, it was just like a no-brainer for the value-centered sales mastermind to be part of that. And also like Katie said, like they teach sales in it, but it's much later in the program and it's like a smaller module because it's only a 6-month training program. So what we decided is that like having a value-centered sales mastermind up front was going to be amazing because we want you to start making sales right away. Like we're certainly not making the case that you should have like a certificate in hand before you start making sales. Like quite the opposite. Like I want you to be building your sales process while you're building your skills.
Yeah.
So value-centered sales mastermind, I'm like obsessed with this model, but I only do 3 people at a time.
Okay.
Because I really feel like that's how you're going to get good at your personal brand and version of sales is like, if you have like my one-on-one support and you have like a couple other women that are reflecting that too and practicing with you versus like if you're in a group of like 50 people, we're just going to be less likely to find your magic. So I want it to be personalized. I want you to have that community support and I want you to be learning your sales process now and making sales sooner. So that by the time you get to that module in IGC, like you've already made sales and you're just refining things.
Yeah.
Versus like, feeling like you can't do that yet. Like you can start doing that now. So we're starting the value-centered sales mastermind like right away when you sign up. I think we're starting like very beginning of March. So if you decide to do coach training, that's going to be a piece for you. Like you get all my personalized attention. Like there's only 3 other women. We have a private Facebook group and you have calls with me weekly. So it's basically like getting personalized coaching.
Amazing. And Lacey, what would you normally like be charging for something like that?
So like, I think pay in full for a value-centered sales mastermind right now is like $1,500. And then I think if you paid monthly, it's like $2,000 or something like that. So, it's like a significant investment.
Yeah. So that's a $2,000 program that you get for free. Like it's included when you sign up for IGC's spring coach training through Lacey. And then I'll just talk about spring coach training for a second. So we start the first week of March as well. There's 3 different classes. So everything happens live, but it's very much targeted to you and your schedule. We do have, because it's also like yours, a niche program, and we don't just take anybody. We do have a sort of interview process, like no pressure, but we do need to talk to everybody who's going through the program. And most people want to talk to us too, right? Most people kind of want to like feel out our vibe. And by the time they get on the phone with us, they're probably a little bit, sold on the idea. Or they're at least really, really strongly considering it and just want to kind of check in and make sure it's a match. So the next step would be to actually talk to me or Olivia Chapman. And the best way to do that, and Lacey's going to post a link for you guys, is to actually just sign up for a call with one of us in the next week or so. Go ahead, hon.
I posted 2 links. So one is to the value-centered sales page, just so you can check that out and decide if that feels like a good fit for you. And the other one, or the first one, is to book a call with Liv and Katie.
Okay, awesome. And so, yeah, guys, like I'd love to speak with you all. I love talking to women who, one, are introduced to me by friends of mine who I trust their community and the women that they send our way. We have a very, very high level community inside of IGC, meaning like I think it's a very specific woman. It's a woman who like wants to keep it real, is ready to be honest, and is ready to do the thing. Like she knows she
action.
Yeah. And we said something in like our hustle and glow training, which kind of led up to this, but I said something like, like don't even wait 15 more minutes because you've probably waited 15 years. you know, and maybe you already have a business that you've been working on, but you want to fine tune things. I wish I could have taken this. And when I say this, I mean our program and your program. I think the coupling is just so powerful.
Yeah.
And being able to hear from you as well as IGC on how to do this, because it's not like you have a completely different perspective. It's like so similar. And so to hear the same thing, but like said in slightly different words or slightly different terms really allows you to integrate it and take it in and make it your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like you get like the best of both worlds in the sense of like you're going to be getting sales support early on from me. So you can like kind of like put that focus on our time together. You're going to be learning a ton about coaching and showing up and being and stuff from Katie and Liv during that time. So you can put your focus there. So though they're integrated, you have these boxes with which to place like your energy and focus. And I think that's really helpful too, because you're not like scrambling on the side trying to figure all this other shit out. You like have these two specific tracks and like two specific support systems to do it with, right?
Totally. So, super excited. Very, very grateful for you, Lacey. Had a lot of fun chatting with you today.
Thank you. I always have fun chatting with you. I love how we were like, oh, we'll keep it to 45 minutes. And then we always go over.
I know. Is there anything, I know, is there anything else you want to say before we close out for today?
No, I don't think so. This was awesome. I'm so glad we got to chat.
Okay, me too. All right, ladies. Well, can't wait to speak with you. Please go ahead
and guys for joining us
and book a call with me or Olivia. It doesn't matter. Both of us know Lacey really well, and we'll take super, super great care of you. And Lacey, I'm so happy and excited for our women to have the opportunity to work with you too. It really means a lot to me. And like, I know you feel this way too because we talked about this, but I really trust our women in your hands, and that makes me feel really good. Like I know that they'll be taken care of. So
yes. Oh, I love that. I love you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys again. Thank you for joining us to talk about sales and getting sold on yourself first. That's really where the magic lies. So thank you again.
Bye guys. Thank you.
Bye.